Welcome everyone to the first episode of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I'm here with Danny Prado, and we're going to get this started, and hopefully this goes off with a bang.
Yeah, the inaugural episode. This is it. This is the start. I'm going to address that number one question that I'm sure we're all going to get as soon as we release this, and that's why did you guys start a podcast?
Honestly, just throwing the idea of us starting this brought everybody into a stir. It was literally, why do you guys want to do a podcast? What's it going to be about? What's your premise? And it's like, whoa, slow down. It's going to be a growing thing. It's not just going to be all at once.
Yeah. Everyone that has been made aware of it has been really excited, but also, why are you doing this, man? Why a podcast? And then also I've gotten the question, what is a podcast? Which is kind of scary, especially in this day and age when there's so many podcast listeners. Maybe we can expose people to a new form of media.
I mean, I think we already have. I mean, I was talking to Megan about it the other day, and she literally went from never listening to podcasts to wanting to get into it. She started watching some, a documentary online about some crazy event that happened 25 years ago. And I was like, this is exactly the kind of stuff that we're going to be talking about in our podcast. You just got to listen in and open your mind. And that's what it's all about, really.
Yeah, and absolutely. There's a need for human beings to engage in conversation, especially long form conversation, whether it's 20 or 30 minutes without looking at your phone. It just brings out a different characteristic in you. It allows you to open your mind a little bit more. And I know you and I are both pretty open-minded people when it comes to topics. We're not really set in our ways or really beholden to one kind of idea on it. We're always trying to learn. So I think this will be a great opportunity for maybe some people to open their minds a little bit too, just based off of our conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the biggest thing about doing the podcast was just the communication part of it. And it's like more like therapy to me. If you think about it, it's kind of like when you're like 12, 13 years old. Well, I don't know about you, Danny, but when I was 12, 13 years old, I'd spend maybe good 8 hours of my day on a cell phone with my significant other, and would just have conversation after conversation, and you'd be oblivious to what was going on around you. And it's that kind of zen-like feeling that you get from just having a real deep conversation with somebody.
Yeah, I did that too, even though I was homeschooled, which I'm sure we'll get into on a later podcast. But yeah, I still spent a lot of time on the phone with the significant other, that sort of thing. And just having conversations with people, I think it explores crevices in your mind and in your thinking, kind of challenges you a bit to explore that. And that's kind of what we're going for here. And with the fact that podcasting is literally exploding, it's just a good opportunity. It's a new form of media. I mean, people are trusting it a lot more than they would other forms of media that are on the news or in movies, that sort of thing.
It's kind of crazy how much podcasting has blown up since when I first heard about it. It was just kind of like a side thing. Kind of YouTubers were transitioning from doing the videos online and then transitioning to just doing straight audio podcasts, and they would have to have already a following behind them before they would even start something like this. But now it's grown into anybody and anywhere. You can start a podcast, and literally just having an iPhone is all you need, and you can get things going.
Yeah, and there are so many, I guess, stats online that are showing that podcasting is here to stay. It's not just a fad like people thought back in the day. Obviously a lot of these personalities that are online that you were talking about, they jumped on it early, and that's why they're so successful. But I think why it appeals to people is it's free. You don't have to pay. You don't have to do any sort of financial investment. And, in the day and age of today where everything's so expensive, I think a lot of people are really liking the idea that it's free and the ability to listen to it anywhere, especially with phones and tablets and Bluetooth sync in your cars. I mean, that's how I do it. I'll listen to 4 or 5 podcasts at least a week, and most of it's in the car, driving to and from work.
Weren't you telling me a stat yesterday or so that there was a most people listen to maybe 4 or 5 podcasts a week or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, absolutely. This is it's actually from convinceandconvert.com. It's a social media measurement that they did at the end of 2016, so the end of last year, a few months ago. And 64% of people that listen to podcasts, they listen to them on a phone or tablet, and there's an average of 5 podcasts listened to a week. So it's definitely growing. Just for reference sake, so 21% of people that are older than 12 have listened to at least one podcast in the last month. And comparing that, there are 21% of users that are on Twitter. So think of the, just the scale of Twitter. Everyone's on Twitter in your mind. You think, oh man, everyone's got a Twitter account. Well, that's 21%. That's the same amount of people that have at least listened to one podcast. Spotify, 13% of people use Spotify. 21% listen to a podcast, which is kind of amazing. There's 21 million listens a day, and that was in the end of last year. It's only growing.
Yeah, see, that blows my mind. I mean, you think about it, you said 5 podcasts a week. That's literally probably one person listening to a podcast on their way to work in the morning from their 9 to 5 job. Maybe commuters listening to a podcast, just throwing it on, making their commute a little easier for them. I mean, I do it while I'm at work. Probably shouldn't be, but
we all do.
hey, a couple hours out of the morning, put some headphones on and listen to a podcast that kind of opens your mind. It's good for you. I mean, once you get out of school, you don't really have that too much. You just gotta kind of hear other opinions, different views on things, and five days out of the week, why not?
Yeah, I mean, we have the ability to have a whole education online. That ability's there. You could get more than a college education online if you just apply yourself and look for it. So podcasting is a way to have this audio learning that you can't get anywhere else. You can multitask. Like I said, I listen to it while I'm driving. You listen to it while you work. I do that too. But it's the ability to have this information flowing in while you're doing something that's just repetitive, something that you do all the time and becomes muscle memory. And why not expand your mind a little bit? That's why I wanted to do this podcast. I wanted to hear other people's perspectives on topics, current events or historical events, or topics like generational differences. I want to do that. I want to hear what other people have to what their thoughts are and what they think about certain topics. It's super interesting. That's my selfish reason. I want to be able to talk to my friends and talk to interesting people.
And and that's what it's all about. I mean, you think about it, we're gonna get a lot of people being like, oh well, what do you guys know about what you're talking about? You guys are just average Joes in there trying to have conversations like you guys are professionals, and that's not what it's really about. I mean, it's really about 2 average Joes just having conversations and expanding your mind. I mean, we're not in this to try to school anybody or tell them what you should be thinking. We're bringing topics up to hear what you're thinking. We want to know about it. It's kind of, we want to hear about that gray area and see where you're at.
Yeah, we're not here to pontificate. We're not here to say, well, this is the reason. There's so many experts that talk about their fields, and we're not trying to challenge them. We're not trying to say, oh man, we have the same amount of knowledge because we looked it up on the internet. But we're just trying to get like the normal everyday human being's reaction to current events, and then just a natural curiosity to all these topics of interest that might pop up. I mean, you and I were just brainstorming the other day, and we came up with I don't know how many topics that were interesting to us, and that we were like, dang, that'd make a really good freaking podcast.
I mean, it takes your bar conversations and puts it into a funnel, basically. Because I mean, when I'm on the cook line with Aaron, we're sitting there and we're BSing about every conversation we could think of, something that we just saw online or something that caught our attention on TV, and all of a sudden 30 minutes later we're already 3 topics deep and just blowing each other's minds with just stuff that we've heard about all day. And I mean, that's what the premise of a podcast really is. It's just opening your mind and kind of pushing that envelope of what you can be talking about and stuff that you don't really get to talk about on an everyday kind of conversation of how's the weather and how's your job. It's, I mean, kind of just broadening your horizon.
Yeah, I think too many people are not having the kind of conversations that you can have when you actually concentrate and just actually think about, the pros and cons of each thing. And that's another topic we'll get into, I'm sure, in a later podcast, is the addiction to cell phones and addiction to media. But how many times have you had a conversation with someone where you haven't looked at your phone for 10 minutes? It puts this huge roadblock up in front of where your guy's thought process was going. And that's something that's going to be really cool, is just to be able to sit down, talk about it, hear other people's perspectives, be open-minded. Like you say, always, it's not about being right or wrong. It's important to ask why, though. And it's important to to recognize how other people's thought processes have led them to why they believe that way. And I don't know, that's just super interesting to me, and I hope it is to everyone else too. I think it will be.
You know what I was thinking about is when was the last time you had a meaningful conversation with somebody immediate to you, like whether it be a family member or your significant other, or yeah, I mean, just when was the last time you had something like that that actually took some time, wasn't just a quick dinner conversation?
Hey, how you doing? Oh, that's great. What are you doing with work lately? You know, that sort of thing. Yeah, I can't think of the last time. I mean, really, I have to go back and actually think about it. And these are the kind of conversations that people in past generations had every single day. You know, we're so distracted, and it's this go, go, go mentality. It's hard to just sit back and, like you said, have a meaningful conversation with someone close to you, or even with a stranger. It's really, really tough these days.
Yeah, I was trying to rack my brain, and I mean, even with being in a relationship for as long as I haven't actually sat down and had a deep conversation about something as simple as just like how social media affects us or anything like that. And you would think that if you can't do it with somebody that you're that close to or see so often, I could only imagine other people that just don't really have that connection with someone, and if they ever even have conversations like this. I mean, I think that's what podcasting really brings to the table, is it gives you that opportunity to kind of get things off your chest that you wouldn't normally get to talk about.
And also, it's a peek into the mind of people. And I might have said that earlier, but it really is. It allows you to, I'm super fascinated personally with the mindset of other people. I like to know why people make the decisions they do, whether they're good decisions, whether they're bad decisions, whether decisions I think are good or bad. And I'm curious to get the thought process behind it and learn, like I said, a peek inside their mind. And I think that podcasting has allowed people to do that. It's brought up topics that normally people would not speak about or would not talk about. And our idea is just get a normal person's perspective. We're not doctors. We're not scientists. We're not teachers. We're any of that. We're just average people. And that's kind of what we're trying to capture.
I think what it's going to come down to is, I mean, a lot of people are going to learn a lot about us, and I think we're going to learn a lot about ourselves. I think this is an opportunity and just something that we both really want to do to kind of grow ourselves and grow our relationship with our minds and kind of see where it takes us. I mean, it's not a trying to get rich scheme or something like that. We're just doing a podcast to kind of really enjoy what we've become and share our experiences that we've had growing up and going forward.
Yeah, I think we were sitting actually at the same spot we're sitting now. I was sitting on the other side of the table, but we just literally were talking about some really interesting stuff, and we thought, you know what, this would make one hell of a podcast, just as a joke. And it kind of just grew from there. And yeah, we're not trying to, have anything come of this. We'd be happy if one person thought about something different in their day. That's how I am. I love sharing my ideas with people, and I love hearing other people's ideas. Like you said, you talked to Aaron, who we're going to be doing a lot of podcasts with. He and Noel, they have these conversations, like you said, on the cook line. I do this with my supervisors, my coworkers. When you're stuck 8 hours, 12 hours with someone, you start talking a lot, especially when you're sitting next to that person at a desk. And I get into some really interesting conversations. So I'm really excited to kind of bring that out in myself and in other people. And if we can get a person or two to go, oh, you know what, I want to look into that topic, I think that'd be really, really cool.
Going into something like this, I mean, you always wonder, what are people going to think? What are people going to say? Yeah. And for me, I mean, it kind of puts you in a odd situation where you don't know exactly how it's going to go, but it's exciting at the same time.
It is.
I know for myself, I'm going to try to be as open as possible. I don't want anybody to feel like I'm faking it just for the podcast's sake. Mm-hmm. I want to keep things as real as possible. So yeah, I'm not going to be throwing out as many stats as I probably should for some viewers or whatnot, but I'm going to be myself, and hopefully being myself is what's going to get you guys to want to comment and kind of throw in your own questions that hopefully we could talk about, or even bring you on to the podcast and give us your opinion, because that's what it's really all about.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing. I think you hit the nail right on the head there, getting other people's ideas and kind of expounding on them. If we have someone that brings up a really interesting question, why not have them on the podcast? I mean, it'd be amazing. That's kind of the plan. We have a no plan, but a plan.
Yeah, it is the blueprint that's still on napkin papers in the restaurant.
Yeah.
It's getting there. It's getting
Yeah,
there.
yeah, we're getting there. But that's pretty much what it is. Like I said, this podcast, I just want it to be a normal, everyday human being's reaction about current events, and then things that are just interesting, things that we have a curiosity for. And we'll definitely take any suggestions as well if people would like to hear, or if they have a question about something we're talking about on one of our topics. We'll definitely expound on that. I guarantee you we will, because that's just how our brains work.
I mean, just for example's sake, what are some of the podcasts that you listen to that kind of brought you into this and made you want to do this, Danny? I mean, what was your influences?
Well, number one was the Joe Rogan Experience. That's what kind of got me hooked on podcasts in general. And then he started bringing on a very wide range of guests in the last few years, and that really expanded it. I really like Russell Brand's new podcast, Under the Skin. That's really, really good. He gets a lot of academics on there and kind of blows my mind at times. I got to go back and re-listen to everything. Neil deGrasse Tyson has a really good podcast. I really got into astrophysics from an average person's perspective on that. I don't understand it at all, but I really try at least. I listen to The Fighter and the Kid. They've got some really good UFC podcasts, as well as just average everyday stuff from their perspective. Just things like that. I like the expounding of ideas. So no matter what discipline it is, I like being able to expound my knowledge or expand my knowledge, and then hearing people talk about that. What about you?
Mine was it wasn't really podcasting at the start. I listened to a gentleman named Philip DeFranco on YouTube, and the way he kind of goes about things is very gray area. He gives both sides of every story, whether it's the side that he wants to take or not, but he definitely shows both ends of it. And he leaves an open discussion at the end, throws it in the comments. So I was at the end of his episode, says, "Hey, I know this is what we talked about. What do you guys think?" And every episode that I watch of his, it just kind of resonated with me, and I was like, man, I want to live my life that way. I want to be able to see things on both sides of the fence, whether it's how I truly believe or not. I want to always look at both sides. So I think when I started getting into the podcast scene, I noticed there was a lot more open-minded people. Like you said, Joe Rogan, he's very open-minded about almost everything. And Russell Brand, I mean, that guy, the first real episode I listened to from start to finish was Joe Rogan, and he had Russell Brand on his show.
That was a great episode.
It blew my mind from start to finish. I was just entranced in everything that they were saying, the way that they were going about things, bouncing off of each other. It was really just mesmerizing. And I'd have to say that Russell Brand might be one of my biggest podcast influences, because he just literally goes from one spectrum to the other of his opinions, and just he believes a certain way, and if you don't like it, that's fine. He's still going to believe it, and it's interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I think he kind of exemplifies the open-mindedness that we want, and not the kind of open-mindedness where you're wishy-washy. You can still hold to your beliefs, but just have that ability that is so rare in this day and age to just go, oh, you know what? That makes a lot more sense than what I was thinking 10 minutes ago. You presented that argument, or you presented that idea in such a different way. Such a way that just made me go, oh, you know what? I need to rethink how I think about a certain topic or idea.
And let's be honest, the best thing about these guys is they keep it so humorous, lighthearted. It makes conversations feel easier, even if there are unpopular topics or just stuff that you normally wouldn't conversate about. They make it a way to where you can still have fun listening about it and interested into it. And I feel like that's how I want this podcast to be, is feel like, yeah, we're going to have some conversations that we probably shouldn't be having, but I want us to not be afraid to talk about it and not get angry about it.
Absolutely, because that's honestly the beauty, especially of the country we live in, is you have the freedom to talk about what you want. And what's so scary in this day and age is a lot of people are trying to take that away from you. They're trying to take away your ability to say, hey, whoa, hold on. Let's talk about it from this perspective. Let's talk about this in a different way. Let's bring up the subjects that need to be talked about, even if, like you said, they are unpopular or not exciting. But hey, you know what? That's our plan with this. Talk.
And that's all it's all about. So, I mean, let's break it down into answering the question of the day. Why do we want a podcast? And I think we made it pretty clear. We want a podcast because we want to hear everybody's opinions. We want to have opinions, and we always want to ask why.
Exactly. That's, like I said earlier, you brought that great lineup. It's not really about who's right or wrong, because it's all a matter of perspective. It's important to ask why. I think that sums it up.
That's all for today's episode of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast on SoundCloud or iTunes to get all updates on future content. And just remember, it's not important who's right or wrong, but it's always important to ask why.